All right. So for the last 2 years, we've been teaching AI to answer questions, giving it context, but that's really not the problem. When you think about the work that you're doing every day, not necessarily that you can't find the right. In the flow of work, things break down because you have emails over here, you have your meetings on this platform, you have your chats over here, your documents locally or in the various cloud systems, and then also the various people that you're interacting with in that flow. And so the bottleneck isn't necessarily the knowledge, it is the coordination. And that's where Copilot Cowork comes in and is that agentic teammate helping to be able to provide clarity and connecting the dots in your flow of work. And so today I am excited to show you what that actually looks like inside an enterprise account. And Human in Loop starts now.
Yo, Eric, happy to have you on, man. How you doing?
I'm great, man. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Sash, how are you, man? Always a pleasure.
Good, brother. Always a pleasure. I look forward to this. And it's so cool to have Eric on. Man, it's been a minute.
It has, man. But it's great when you're in the journey, the Jedis that help organizations over the years. I've been grateful to work with you in the past and looking forward to continue to collaborate.
Yeah, it's like sort of like we got the band back together, man. Like I don't think all three of us worked ever together at the same time, but I know Eric, you and I crossed paths when I was at Microsoft. Sasha, I know you and Eric are boys from your. I don't know if did y'all know each other when you were at Microsoft too? Or was it a post Microsoft connection?
We were on the same team.
That's right.
We've actually shared clients. We've done events together. And it's a pleasure. Eric and I kind of reconnected after a while, just like Chris, you and I reconnected after a while. And then here we are. And Eric's doing some very cool stuff. Eric actually, after we were on the same team at Microsoft, you did some virtual reality stuff, which was super cool, mixed reality stuff. Dope. And now you're working on Copilot. So, dude, before we start, tell us what you've been up to. What do you do? And then we'll dive right into it.
Yeah. So Eric Brown, go by EB. There's lots of Erics in the world. I am a solution engineer focusing on Copilot and agents. But like mentioned, I think that I consider my role as a lifestyle to say, I just help individuals and organizations understand the art of the possible as it relates to emerging technologies. And so in the past, whether it's Internet of Things, augmented virtual reality, now the wave is AI, agentic workflows. But I think the through line for me in my journey and even my connection to you all is that we know there's a lot of complexity in organizations. And my goal is like, how do I simplify the complex and say like, how does the tools actually help you add value and make impact within your organization, but also in society? And so in this role now, I get the opportunity to work with organizations and helping them be able to figure out like, all right, how do I realize value with AI? But more importantly, what are the problems I'm solving and how do I break it down?
Yeah. That's awesome. So you're a solution engineer in Microsoft, and you work with Copilot in the Microsoft ecosystem, Microsoft 365 ecosystem, and you work with enterprise clients. Okay, that's epic. And when we started talking, everybody kind of knows I run trainings and I train people on AI orchestration, and I work a lot with Copilot Cowork, Copilot Code. And we were just kind of comparing notes of how people are using these agentic apps, if you will, or agents. And something very interesting came about from that conversation. So I'm like, we got to share this with our audience. Eric's actually seen it being used in the enterprise. He helps customers, Microsoft's large customers, use it. So kind of very excited, man. Why don't we start with kind of tell us how Copilot Cowork fits in the Copilot ecosystem a little bit, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. So when we think about kind of the journey that we've been on with AI, obviously it's been around for a long time. I remember thinking to myself, we used to be called like intelligent systems back in like 2014, 2013 prime frame. And we were the same team, Sasha. I'm like, yeah, we were going talking to banks about, what is intelligence and predictive analytics. And so AI is not new, but in regards to this new large language models and being able to have this type and now chat interface to be able to get information and to make correlations. Initially people use it for, hey, an intelligent assistant. It's going to be able to assist me in my process, give me the right information, the right context. And typically people interact with it as far as like, sometimes people think it's a glorified search engine, which is not, but they go in and say, all right, I'm going to put a message in. Hopefully I get a message back. Over the last year or so, we've kind of evolved in saying, you know what, how do we have specific context and even be able to go from just getting information to saying, well, ultimately, I want something done. And if this agent or this large language model can help actually take action on that task, that would be very helpful. And so what Cowork is able to do now is saying, you know what, instead of just going and giving me, here's my recommendation, Eric, for you to do various tasks over this next month. I'm like, well, how about you actually go and set it up for me, be able to go interact with these various systems and do that on my behalf, kind of with me in the loop. And so we're going from just interacting with chat interfaces to now saying, how do I have an agentic teammate that's able to be almost like a digital intern that I can give context and coach, and they can actually take action on those various tasks. And I think a lot of organizations now are saying, all right, I get the value of getting information, but I want tasks done.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're I get caught up, right, as someone who thinks like a builder, who has a technical background, and Sasha, I know you and I are a lot like this, and I think Eric, you might be too. Whereas like I live in the terminal a lot, right? Like I don't live in my desktop nearly as much as I used to ever since I had my big agentic moment. And so it's easy to forget or get caught up in my own world that like the value here, I feel like so much of the value of the agentic world is not for people like me. And it's not for people like us, right? Because like if you're a professional tinkerer, as we've had a prior guest refer to himself, which I love, like you're gonna find a way to figure shit out, like in whatever tool stack you have, and do so. But not everyone thinks that way. But if you're a knowledge worker, if you live in your apps, if you're only allowed to use, like if you're a bank teller, right? Like how can we take this concept of, well, how can this still work for you? Right? Like if it's easy for me to get an agent to do a work because I can go and I can type /skill, right? I can call a loop, I can orchestrate and take a step back. But how does someone who lives in their collab suite, lives in their productivity suite, how can they still get these same benefits, right? So I'm super excited for you to kind of educate us, man, because I think it's part of my game that I need to get better at too.
No, I really value that. And I think that one thing that you mentioned is that in working with innovation teams across organizations and industries, there's always those early adopters, those tinkerers like ourselves that are on the edge. But the question becomes, as organizations and as leaders, are we taking everyone else in the curve with us, right?
Right.
And so like
Great
a lot of the
point.
concepts that, why we're really good at AI right now is because we've been doing it from the basics, right? We've been doing it in the CLI. We understand systems thinking. But for someone that doesn't do that, I think what Chat as well as Cowork able to do is able to democratize the ability to have those workflows just using natural language. And so with that, I'm happy to share my screen.
You're there,
kind of get right into it. Just kind of the showcase the UI.
Yeah.
And so
go for it, Eric.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, this is something that a lot of individuals are familiar with. And I think that Copilot has the ability to really leverage different models. I think that sometimes people are like, well, I just go and I put something in the search engine here or the interface and try to get something back. And all models are not created equal. And the blessing of using Copilot is the fact that for those that are kind of astute to the various models that are out there, you have the ability to choose kind of based on your task, what you want to do, and across different platforms, whether it's OpenAI, Anthropic, and the list is continuing. But ideally, most people to start with auto because they're like, I don't really know. And I want the system to be able to help intelligently decide for me. But this is kind of where people primarily are today, is being able to put in information and try to get a response back. So for example, here, just kind of starting off, testing 1, 2, 3. Copilot, I want to be able to see a chart that explains the difference between Copilot Chat and Cowork.
And Eric, a quick distinction. So in Copilot, you've got the chat and the cowork mode. In chat, we were just talking about you just ask questions, a single responses. And when you flip to cowork, that's where you have more agentic power, where it can actually connect to tools, connect to data, stop, reason, think, execute. Correct.
Yeah.
And this is actually a great query you just ran. You're going to show the difference to our audience as well.
Yeah, and I think it's also a mindset shift too. So like right now, like I said, we've been primarily using AI for information gathering. I want context within the Copilot enterprise environment. You have the ability to have something called Work IQ, and so it actually understands, okay, who are the people, the files, the meetings, the emails I've been working with, the various chats, the channels, the sites, etc. And so when I'm able to go and ask a query, it now has that context. And so it's more relevant than something basic. But even in this scenario, this is still, hey, Eric is asking for information. It's definitely great as far as being able to lay out the roles, the use cases, etc. But when it gets to cowork, ultimately the information is only one piece of the puzzle. I have an example here of the flow. Typically, we'll go and we'll gather content. We'll go and say, all right, let me find a deck that someone else did. Let me talk to Sasha and everyone else and say, all right, what are their thoughts on this? I'll create a draft deliverable, some spreadsheets, something like that. I'll go follow up and figure out, okay, let's get a review. Then I'll communicate the outcomes. Like that's six steps, right? And typically when I'm going and asking for that context around Copilot Chat versus Cowork, that's just the first step of getting information that I can ultimately disseminate to others or be able to validate to be able to share out. And so in that flow, thinking about now, as I think about Cowork as an agentic partner, instead of thinking about a prompt as give me context, I got to think about what is the outcome that I want and be able to give it that directive.
Right. And a great point did you mention about Work IQ. When we started working on our Microsoft 365, when it started, this was the graph, which was connecting signals across SharePoint, across OneDrive, then Teams came about, and it became very useful. The more you worked inside that system, the more you interacted with people and data, the graph got better. That became a semantic layer. Now, on top of that, you have LLM models that can reason. I think that itself is so valuable for using something agentic like Cowork in the Microsoft 365 enterprise. And just to kind of, the way I use Cowork is I point it to a set of files or folders on my system, which is, this is like Claude Cowork, not in the M365 system. And the having Work IQ is just makes it so much richer for the first step that you mentioned, context gathering and really finding the information that's useful to Eric. So that's quite valuable inside the Microsoft 365 system, I think.
I mean, it's a data warehouse over your unstructured data, right? Inside there. It's the same thing that we were trying to build back in the early days of BI development, of how can we get something centralized that we can access single source of truth out of. And that's to me what Work IQ does, right? It kind of it takes that graph layer, which at point was really just like an API layer to connect everything, enriches that with context, enriches that with semantic search. Right now, we're not just connecting on file names, who has permission, what do I have access to, but like how are these documents, like how are they related, not just through like metadata only.
Yeah, and what I like about this too is another layer of this with Copilot is I'm able to add my own memories and context in addition to that. So Work IQ does get some of that baseline, but if I say, you know what, I want you to specifically remember this, now my searches or results are able to be tailored to my personal view based on my coaching. And then there's something called skills, which we'll talk about later, where you can get really specific around, all right, here's the step-by-step instructions that I want you to follow each time based on my preferences.
That's great. So tell us, we're looking at the Copilot Cowork tab right now. And I guess here also you can choose the model and pick and choose folders as well.
You can. And so similar to before, you can choose the model, also kind of the level of effort and reasoning. And then clicking this plus here, I can go and add context. So whether it's the people files, upload images, or context, and then be able to also just be able to attach to resources. So for, like you said, if you have a SharePoint site or document library. And then also in customize, I have the ability to have plugins. And so whether I want to connect to Fabric IQ or Notion or other platforms to have that context, that is there as well. And I think, as you know, back to work IQ and just memories and even these plugins, the work is scattered across various systems.
Hmm.
And as someone that is able to connect those dots with APIs, et cetera, more technical, that makes it simple. But for an end user, like, how am I able to get that context? I don't want to have to copy and paste over. Now we're just bringing all of that context into this UI for the end user to be able to have that fidelity.
Okay. And Eric, so there's data across these disparate systems. Plus, Work IQ brings you data from within the Microsoft 365 system. So I guess, does Cowork follow the permissions that Eric has within these systems and then can access that data? Only can access the data that Eric has access to.
No, that's a great question. And I think that's foundational. And another reason why organizations are leveraging Copilot and Cowork is all of the security, compliance, governance policies that you put in place at a ground level, as far as those other underlying things like Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, OneDrive. It all applies here. And so your digital assistant only has access to the items that you have access to. And so
Mhm.
you don't have to worry about kind of oversharing or even Copilot having access to something that you don't personally have access to.
Okay. And that's important in an enterprise setting as well.
Very, very much so. I think that you want to be able to enable creativity and innovation. And the analogy that I often use is that you want it to be a casino and not a prison, and that you are allowing people to go and play and do what they want within those guardrails without necessarily causing any oversharing or leakage.
That's epic. Give us some examples of what you use Cowork for, and how people can use it within the Microsoft ecosystem as well.
Yeah, so you have the ability to, create tasks, which I'll create one here in a moment. You have a list of all of your tasks here. You also have the ability to have automations. So I think that when you think about your flow of work, there's oftentimes maybe you have a weekly meeting,
Mhm.
or you have a cadence where, what, I'm going to have to do a report or do a recap or even do some type of research. Instead of having to go here and type that in each time, if you know that time frame, you can make an automation so that it just shows up here. It says, here's your report for this week, or here's your brief for your next meeting later today at 4 p.m. And so now, instead of you having to use that cognitive load to keep going back and forth, it can actually be kind of proactive and just provide information to you in that right flow of work.
Okay.
Can those
And
I assume that those automations, right? Because I think I'm seeing unlock capabilities left and right here. Like when I think automation specifically in the co-work space, right? Like I want those to be triggered based on things that I do, right? As an example, hey, when I finish a call, when I finish a team call, if there's a transcript, can you go ahead and grab that transcript? Maybe I like to save all of my calls in like a OneNote, right? Can you kind of push all that downstream? So now I'm building my own sort of personal corpus of calls that I have access to right now. That becomes a searchable repository, things like that. Like, am I thinking in the right lines of where some of these can go to?
Absolutely. And so I think actually I'll use that as an example to kick things off. And I will use voice to kind of start this off. Hey, Copilot. I have on my calendar a series of meetings. I want to be able to have you take those transcripts and create a summary and next steps automatically. And so, can you create an automation to be able to look at my calendar and make that simplistic for me so that I don't have to do it manually?
While
Not
that's
the
running,
ideal.
I
Go
love the
ahead.
voice mode there, and I think that's something
yeah,
like one of those little things that it took me a while to kind of get into. It's such a time save. It is such a time save.
it is. And once you dictate, you're never going to go back to typing. It's so easy.
Never.
Yep, I agree. And so let me show you here
So
on the side. Go ahead.
So here, this particular query is great. So it's got access to your calendar. It can actually grab the transcripts from your Outlook calendar and just work on it, right? And then you're asking it to create the automation. So it's automatically going to create that. You don't have to go configure anything. And then you can provide judgment on what it created and how it's writing this up.
Correct. And so as you can see now, it popped up on the side here. There's a workspace
Yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
going and doing a level of planning. So it did a level of thinking based on my ask. It says, all right, I'm processing. I'm going to create a reoccurring daily meeting summary. I can go and schedule that on my calendar. But one thing about this process is it's definitely iterative, and that's going to ask me step by step. Okay, here are the things I'm going to check for. So I'm creating this daily summary meeting. I'm going to go and check your meeting and see if there's any transcripts. This is a demo environment, so it doesn't have lots of content, but in theory, based on your flow, it'll go and look at it and say, okay, what are the transcripts for the day? It's going to now think about this meeting digest. This is what I'm asking for. And so I was like, you know what? No meetings today, but I'm going to go and say, you know what? I want to continue. So going forward, it can send it to me. It says now your automation is set up. So I ran it once, so I didn't have anything today, but every day at 5:30, I'll check your calendar for meetings, see what happened, pull the available transcripts, and send me the digest of that. And it's doing it via
Right.
email, right? But if I had a preference of saying, you know what, I actually want to send it here, or I want to send it via
Wherever.
Teams, whatever the case may be, I can just continue to add that level of steps. But the thing to call out is in this process, I am given that level of approval. I'm the human in the loop saying, you know what? I do want you to look at my calendar. I do want you to send this email. I do want you to set this automation. And it's telling me exactly where it's sending. But also it's showing me what tools it's leveraging. So back to that work
Mhm.
IQ, it's using my calendar, it's using my Outlook. But if I were to say, you know what, I also want to use Teams or some other tool, I can also call on that.
Yeah.
Push this
I
into
think
pushes into
this,
dynamics, right? Like, hey, I
yeah,
have a sales pipeline that I'm managing.
exactly.
Pull my calendar, filter by customer equals X, and use that data to update my dynamics opportunities, right? Like the sky is endless with this, and I'm sure there's a way you could even publish
Yeah.
this out as a webhook, right? Or maybe if you are a little more technical, but you want to use Copilot in your space of taking this and saying, hey, like I want to use the output of this then to integrate with my third-party tools,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah. I mean, the
Absolutely.
few kind of workflows that come to my mind after Chris, you made that comment was, yeah, I've got a workflow similar to this where it can check my email for incoming leads, which could be just inquiries from customers that are inbound, and I haven't had a conversation with them. I would run an automation to do a search on that particular person, add it to the CRM, and then prepare for the meeting itself. These kind of tasks that we do pretty
Mm-hmm.
regularly and repeatedly, but we're not kind of paying attention to, that it's a part of our workflow and process. Cowork is a great kind of agentic tool to automate that stuff.
Yep.
And it kind of takes care of a lot of the grunt work.
Yeah, and I think what I love about it too is that instead of it doing one-off tasks, it has the ability to understand kind of what my end state is. So now
Yeah.
it knows my calendar. It knows that, all right, this is something that happens every day. One thing that's actually calling out here is that, okay, I have this weekly review learning tracker and a study block for Copilot Studio and AI governance. So it's even knowing the full context of what I'm doing. So if I say, hey, do an audit of my calendar over the last 2 months, see the trends. What are some things that I should prioritize? What are some things that I should maybe delegate? Now, for my own work for productivity, it has that full context and it can actually execute across the work that I do holistically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Yeah.
this. I think about when I was at Microsoft, I had a 2-hour block every Monday from 1 to 3 p.m. That was just technical training, right? Reading blogs, reading competitor stuff, what's going on. And I think over the course of the 7 years I had that, I used that actual 2 hours for that dedicated time once. Something always got prioritized, right? My mind is sort of shifting. And like I'm thinking about this now with this of saying to your point, hey, maybe I want to have this block again and introduce it. But that time I'm getting Cowork to distill this information down for me. right? Like
Yeah.
an hour before this, run all of this, update the meeting invite, tell me what I need to know, tell me what I care about so that I can use that time. And I'm not just like, oh my gosh, where do I start from? Right now, here's a curated list of how I can learn and get better in this time.
Yeah. And I think in order to develop that, sometimes you need to have a plan and also a community to learn and grow with. And this is a scenario I ran earlier. And the thing is, a question I get often is like, hey, Eric, I feel like I'm a little behind in this journey. I want to become proficient in X, Y, and Z. And so this is a prompt that I ran earlier today of saying, you know what? I want to be proficient in Copilot Studio, governance, and it's giving me a time over the next 60 days. But I want you to create a learning pathway, find the resources, schedule the time, but more importantly, to your point, I actually want you to create a tracker that tracks my progress over time and also makes recommendations. And so now it's not just saying a task, I'm giving you the output and saying, leverage all the resources that you have access to help me track, to train, to collaborate. I can even say, who are people that I should also do this with? And at high level, it was able to go through and leverage my calendar, be able to, you know, come up with some frameworks, NIST, et cetera, for me to study. But then I said, well, render kind of a summary of what that looks like. So it's giving me, all right, over that time frame, you know what is my targets? What are the resources, the deliverables? But imagine whether it's learning or even just the work that you do, being able to break things down in a way that's like, it's not just something that's just an idle on my calendar, but something that actually gets done and tracked.
Yeah. Mm. One thing you mentioned, Eric, like defining the output and then giving it a goal. And as long as it has access to the right context, instructions, and tools, it will try to accomplish that goal. I talk a lot about it in my orchestrator method. The first step is define the end state with clarity. You got to sort of understand what you want, what the output should look like, what should be the structure of the output, and then define the steps it needs to go there, which is where something agentic like Cowork is super useful. And just watching this operate within the Microsoft 365 operating like the environment, it's so much it's so valuable. And because your data is there, it knows what kind of content and people are interacting with, and it can get a lot of things done. So